Hello, Lovebugs. Welcome back to the Girls Night podcast, where we explore the stories, ideas, and innovations driving personal transformation. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Ipek Gray, a gifted practitioner and illuminator of the unique and deeply data-driven approach to self-awareness known as the Born Method, a system founded by her mother and now carried forward with heart, rigor, and clarity by Ipek herself. Over the past 25 years, the Born Method has been refined into a patented, precision based practice grounded in a 20-digit life matrix derived from your exact birth date. It's not astrology and it's not human design. It is its own path, built on over 60,000 hours of coaching and 60,000 plus birth date analysis. It blends math, data, and ancient wisdom into crisp, personalized insights to help you confidently make big decisions, whether that's launching a business, timing a career move, navigating parenting, or getting unstuck in your relationships. So, Ipek brings this method to life with her uniquely clear and open hearted style. Clients describe sessions as one of the best gifts you can give yourself, granting tangible tools and self awareness in just 90 minutes. Her work guides people toward informed choices in their personal lives, professional pursuits, and relational dynamics. So, everybody, help me welcome Ipek. Hi, everyone. Life can get a little crazy, so let's talk about it. If you're ready to dive deeper, talk about what really matters, and feel a little more empowered, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Carley Doxtator. I'm a life coach, baker, dog mom of two, and you're always there for you, gal pal. And I'm so excited to have you join me. So grab your fuzzy socks, put on your comfy pants, and let's have girls' night. Ipek, welcome to the show.
Hi, Carly. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to have you. And for everybody who is listening, Ipek and I also did a session between us, and I'm so excited for this episode because it literally blew my mind. So I'm so excited to dive into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you got to firsthand go through the numbers and the math.
So, Ipek, this is something that your mom discovered over 20 years ago. Can you dive into that a little bit for us?
Yes, of course. Um, and by the way, 20 years ago means she was working on this during my formative years. She's a single mom and I'm an only child, so we're incredibly close. And her background is she's a orthodontist by training and she had her dental private clinic, but on the side, and at heart, she's a researcher. So she got very interested in studying how math exists in nature, in our lives, and then all the known methods that bring birth dates into our lives to give us guidance. So we know of astrology, human design, Kabbalah, numerology are some of them, and she combined her research in math with all these existing practices and added, as you mentioned early on, more than 60,000 hours of one-on-one behavioral data and coaching analysis. So the collection of that ends up being what I now call the Born Method in the US, but what she calls the math of life in Turkey. And it it is a language of numbers and it's universal and it has supported people in many different ways, from individual growth to relationships to growing their businesses.
I love the fact that it's very data driven because
Hmm.
I don't know, just the way that my brain personally works. I feel like, yes, I love the like spiritual side of everything, but I also love science and the data and the number side of everything. So I love that this kind of blends the two together.
Yeah, exactly. And that's me also. My background is in data science. I did 15 years of work in social impact, and I wanted to bring this work to the US because I feel like people are really in need of this thing that combines both the sort of spiritual side of them with their analytical side.
So you mentioned that your mom was doing this work in your formative years. So can you talk a little bit about what it was actually like growing up with that, surrounded by that and surrounded by the system in the world? And I guess a part two to that question, how did that kind of change your perspective um, on life in general, I guess, as this
Mhm.
method evolved?
Yeah, so I joke that we did and we still do talk in numbers. We have our own language. So as she was building this method, she would share her observations, her research with me, but we would test it in our own lives. So as like a 14-year-old girl dating my first boyfriend, we would look at his birth date in combination with mine. Um, and instead of using it as sort of this magic globe, we would use it as alternative information to help us better understand the people around us. So, like a boyfriend example would be where it would help me understand, okay, so he values his freedom. He may not call me all the time. So as a 13-year-old, it's easy to take those things personally, and that can affect your own self-esteem development in those ages too. But it helped me as a tool to look at people as unique individuals having their own blueprint, having their own expectations and ways of going through life. So as I grew up too, it just became one of those perspectives that allowed me to not take everything personally and be able
Hmm.
to use numbers as a guide to decode behavior that was going around me that affected me personally.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to use it too, to that point, because even as an adult, it can be painful when somebody doesn't respond or someone doesn't reach
Mhm.
out, or if you felt you had like a connection with somebody and it just fizzled out or you got ghosted. So I think that's a really good point that you can use this to be like, oh, actually, maybe it wasn't just me, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And there are even more individualized examples. Sometimes the data, the numbers can tell us that our partner needs to see things visually. So let's say you're planning something with your friend or your partner, and if you just tell him about this beautiful resort in Florida or whatever, he may not get as excited as if he also saw the pictures around it. So it gives tips around strengthening communication, um, and things that can just cause tension in daily life can become very easy to sort of walk through and solve
Yeah,
through something like this.
I love that. You mentioned that you have a background and for 15 years you were in data analytics. So when did you truly start to take on a bigger role with the board method and doing that yourself as a practitioner?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that's actually very recent. When I was pregnant with my second son, I decided to, instead of applying to the next role, next job in the next sort of um, company that would be a higher level title, everything just seemed like a burden being
Right.
in my existing field. So I started looking for things that was aligned with what I like to do, which is use data to explain and digest big ideas. Um, and this was obviously such a personal thing. I never thought of making it my professional goal too, but um, I realized that this is how I was looking at jobs because companies have numbers too, or this is how I was planning my important interviews, job interviews. So I realized, like, what if others also need guidance like this that's individualized? And so I officially started taking one-on-one clients in January. And almost 200 clients later, now it's the seventh or the eighth month of practicing this professionally, but um, it's always been a huge part of who I am.
Hmm.
Um, Something I actually just was sharing with my husband is in college, I used to work at a coffee shop as a barista, and I would do Turkish coffee nights. And people would come to be like, okay, I'll tell you, like fortune telling, because in Turkey it's a big tradition. But I don't know anything about coffee fortune reading. So I would get their birth dates and just do quick calculations in my date and offer guidance through the numbers. But it's just like a funny snippet of how I'd always use this in some way in
Yeah.
my life. But it's recent that it's become this sort of bigger career
Well, and
for me.
clearly it's paid off too. I mean, having over 200 clients in that short amount of time, I think really speaks to the work that you're doing. and just the impact that you're having on people, which is great.
Thank you. Yes. And it's been a lot of women, men too, lots of people going through career transition or starting or improving existing relationships. Those are kind of the two main audiences that have been really interested in using the Born method as a tool.
Right. I'm kind of curious. So that's a really interesting career trajectory, and I think that's a lot that people consider for themselves, right? Going from a standard 9 to 5, especially
Mm,
moms, I've heard this a lot, just like with your situation where all of a sudden it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel fulfilling to go back into the office the same way that it was before they had children. So can you, I know it's a little bit off topic from the Born method, but can you speak a little bit on that, on a little bit deeper on
yeah.
why you decided to make that decision and go in this direction?
Yes, of course. One of the things that shifted for me becoming a mother, and I always held fairly comfortable jobs. Like, my last two roles were remote, so I could work from home and see my kids. So I feel like a lot of parents, not just moms, have situations where it's less flexible. But even within that, I felt like my time became a luxury very quickly as soon as I became a mother. And those 8 to 10 hours and what I did with work, um, that became irrelevant, but it was the feeling that I carried from those hours into spending time with my kids. So,
Okay.
um, I was just not feeling like I was doing what I was meant to do. Um, the team culture didn't feel aligned. And I'm sharing all of this because I think it's a common theme across many
Mhm.
people who go through career pivots and moms who think about it. But I was bringing a version of myself to my time with my kids that felt tense. And
Mhm.
even in those moments, I would do the calculations like, oh, it's my 2, 3, 5 day. So I understand that I'm a little stressed and this is how I communicate. But even the numbers, it was just beyond that. Um, and I happened to just through motherhood connect with many entrepreneur founder mothers who, and they've been my biggest supporters so far too, some of my first clients. But I realize that it's that sort of first step, the risk we each take that then defines that pivotal point in our sort of motherhood slash professional life. And
Right.
I think through those conversations, it was just really helpful to realize that, you know, finding something aligned with who I am, my numbers, but also makes me feel less tense when I get to move into my family hours was
Right.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I just dropped my microphone. Sorry, everyone. Um, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but when you fully decided to make this pivot into the Born method, did you run all the numbers on it?
I did, because our years have numbers also. And I think we all feel this in different ways. You know, there's sometimes years where we feel very introspective, emotional, and feeling first. And then there are other years where we seem to have infinite energy.
Hmm.
Um, so I knew that during my pivotal, that sort of this year, was a good time for me to invest in growing my network, taking a risk. Um, there are other years where I could have decided on this, but it wouldn't have been as successful.
Hmm.
So it just, instead of a decision-making tool or in addition to a decision-making tool, it was helpful as sort of like a confidence boost to have the clarity through
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when you're making big transitions like that, I think anything that you can use is helpful, you know? And I think that just from my personal experience, everything was so accurate in my profile that this is one, I mean, especially
Yes.
since you're so intimate with it, right? You know it so well.
Yeah.
I think this is one that I would lean on too in those big areas where you're making those decisions.
Right. Like I just had a client where she's been in her company for 20 years and she really wants to do a career switch. But this year for her, it's a 5, 6 2 year. But what that means is she's supposed to ask questions to her network, to people outside of our network. So instead of pushing to find a new job and pushing to get that new title, and it can feel tense in years like that, she's actually better off doing the research this year and then be set up for success the following year. So to hear these things from someone else can be really helpful as sort of, okay, it's not just me or me feeling worried or things not working out. It's actually, there's a timing and a reason for it all, backed
Mhm.
by numbers and data.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of your clients, so you've worked with so many people. Your mom has also worked with so many people
hmm
over the past 20 plus years. So what is one of the most surprising transformations or surprising I guess readings, if that's a fair way to call it, surprising readings that you've had with a client?
Yeah, so um it's funny actually. One of the first few examples that come into mind are from my in-person workshops. And in those, I just show how to calculate one of 20 numbers. And then I show my workshop attendees like what each number means. And I love those because one of the most transformative ways people listen and react to it is so this just happened. So a mom, she just had her kid after trying for a very long time. And in the workshop, I shared with her that her life purpose number is a 5, which is very briefly means that she needs to be free in order to create things. And freedom and independence is very important for her. And she was immediately almost in tears in like a 20-person workshop saying, yes, this makes so much sense. And I was feeling bad not wanting to spend time at home with my kid for more than half a day. But
Right,
she was feeling like, even though she loves her son, she wants to be there, but she's meant to expand her circle. Even if she's with her son, she's meant to be outside traveling and doing things with him. So it just sort of little words of wisdom can feel incredibly aligned and help us understand how we can sort of hug some of the feelings we
right.
have instead of push them away. Um, and then this is another example, but an example of like transformation. A few come into mind. One of them is a family session I did, and the mother and the father both, and this rarely happens, but they're both mostly fire numbers. So all
Hmm.
20 of the numbers ended up being fire elements, which
Wow.
each number has an element too, but they have a son who's all air numbers and a daughter who's all earth numbers. So before I even got to zoom into the family dynamics and how they can communicate, I told the mom that, look, like your son is here to teach you other perspectives. Because as a fire element, it's very hard for her to step outside of her plans and vision. And it's just amazing how the people around us, including our kids, come here to
Hmm.
our lives to teach us certain things about ourselves. And I think me sharing the elements around the numbers and him wanting to be sort of this hurricane and explore things and her wanting to stand in one place, that
Hmm.
was what was causing tension, not because she's a bad mom or he's a defiant kid. Um, so that was another sort of transformational like family
Yeah.
session for them.
Yeah. Well, that's something that a lot of people can relate to, I believe too. I mean, I've had so many of my friends even, and this is a little bit different, but they've moved back in with their parents after graduating college or as an
Mm-hmm.
adult, and there's always that friction, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you have the tools to understand each other better, then as you're saying that you helped them understand each other better, then that is so powerful and helping you just to alleviate some of that friction because kind of how you said earlier, it's just taking the personal aspect out of it, right? Like it's not a personal attack against you. This is just kind of who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, and it uses a totally unbiased language of numbers. So
Hmm.
families can talk to each other saying like, "Oh, you're a 1, 2, 3, or you're a 5, 2, 7. So let's, I need to ask you less questions, or I need to ask you more questions. It's that kind of unbiased, apolitical language that people can have.
Right. There was
Yeah.
there was another powerful message that you shared just now with the first client with the mom. And so I
Hmm.
want to touch on that about how she was feeling friction within herself because she was living based on what she felt like she should be doing and what she felt like she
Hmm.
should be feeling with her child. But really, the way that she is and the way that she's set up, she needed to operate differently. And that's a trap that a lot of us fall into, right? We try to do everything
Yeah.
that we should be doing based on societal standards or wherever those come from. So I think that that's something really powerful that you helped her realize, hey, there's another way to do this that's more aligned with who you are. And it's not the wrong way. Actually, for you, it's actually the right way.
Right. Exactly. Um, exactly. And it becomes more than just a friend or a therapist or an article, like something saying it, do it in your own way can feel very helpful, but
Hmm.
hearing a very specific guidance around who she is and the way she can parent, I think that's one of the most helpful
Right.
tools for someone.
Right, because it's personalized to who you are, right? It's not just generalized advice.
Exactly.
It's very specific on all the data behind it that y'all have spent so long perfecting.
Yes, exactly. Um, yeah, like different, and I gave a very different advice to the dad to that son. So it's not
Mhm.
even just or very different advice to the same mom with her daughter. So I think this can show up in different ways. And you can in a relationship with X person, you're different Carly than you are to the next person. It's
Right,
because of this sort of almost data that you create together with different individuals and
right.
how we can read that.
Absolutely. So, for everybody listening, we're about to walk through some of the numbers of my profile, some of the numbers that you might expect when you have your session with EPEC. But can you kind of walk through the process of what someone can expect when, let's say, someone's listening, they want to do it, they want to sign up
Yeah.
for a session. What is the process that they go through leading up to the session and during the session?
Yes. So the only information that I ask my clients for, two things. One of them is their birth date, so your day, month, and year. In our calculations, year is very important. And using those three numbers, I use the patented formulas we have to create your unique 20-digit code. So that's one information. The other one is I ask my clients in the same intake form, what feels important to them right now? And that's where I get information about what they need support on. So it could be a career pivot. It could be even something as vague as, I just want to know what I'm here to do. Or like, can you tell me what this year I need to how to use this year in the best way possible. So
Mhm.
I then read the data associated with their numbers through that lens. What I mean by data is I look at their code and I look at our database, and also this is now like innately in my head, but look at what specific information I can share with the client. So if it's a career conversation, I look at their communication skills, their expectations from a job, how the data around how they make decisions. And the data that I'm referring to is from historical events, historical people, current events, and it's very actionable. So when the time for the session, for the one-on-one virtual session comes, I share all of the information while showing the numbers as, look, this is where I see the number and this is what it means. And I even use examples from, current companies, like when a company launched their app, that's when they added a technology aspect to their growth. So if it's a conversation about growing someone's business, I share that number and that event as an example of what they can do to grow their company through
Okay,
technology.
amazing.
Um, yeah.
I love that. I love that it is just so whatever you need, like that's what you can address in the session. And that's what's so unique about it
Yes.
because there's so many different ways and so many different aspects that you can look at it.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of my clients are um come in wanting to learn about themselves. So
Right.
I think that then helps with any decision that they're making or any tensions they're facing in relationships or business, but it could be very personalized for
hmm
sure.
So when we did my session, and you actually touched on this number already a little bit before, but I
Hmm.
believe you mentioned that people are always really interested in their life purpose number. And during my session, that was a 9. So can you expand a
Yes.
little bit on what that is, what that means for everybody listening? Maybe one of you listeners is a 9 as well.
Yes. So the life purpose number, um, in the most simple way, I calculate it using your birth month and then your birth year. So I add those two numbers, and in the born method, we only have numbers 1 through 9. So every person will have a life purpose number that's either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9.
hmm
And each of them has a different meaning. And each also carries information about our biggest fears, but also guidance around how we can unlock those fears and reach our full potential. Would it be helpful if I shared the 9 and the meaning of it or
Yeah, I think so because this is one of the parts that I was blown away because some of the things that you shared with me, I was like, oh my God, like I've always felt this, but I've never put words to it. And then you
Yes,
were able to
yes.
put words to it so easily. So I think that would
Hmm.
that would be helpful maybe for people that are listening.
Yeah, of course. So for 9, um, what I shared was that your life purpose is to teach forgiveness. And um, that, I mean, that's a very large statement, but it's nines can have this sort of fear in life, and that can, it's almost like a muscle that we build from childhood into adulthood, but they are worried about not being forgiven for their mistakes. And this usually happens because nines have the story of sort of being either the youngest or even if they're the oldest of the family, they're put in the position of being just a kid in their
hmm
family. And they end up wanting to show up as adults, or they end up wanting to always prove to the people around them that they are strong, capable
Right.
people. And I think I share this example with you too, but nines are often like the 10-year-old that can cook a meal. Like they just do things beyond their age.
Right.
And the forgiveness piece becomes relevant because nines sometimes have a hard time forgiving the adults around them for almost not letting them live their childhood in that way. And this
Right.
doesn't have to be a trauma. So I'm not talking in like psychological terms. It's
Right.
more sort of like the probability of this increases for you as a
Okay.
nine in math
Right.
terms. And if this is something that nines feel, if you feel, then the best way to break this pattern, this thought process, is to forgive past events and not ruminate over things because that's what made you be beyond your age and that's what helps you create things that others have not. But when we look at it through the lens of like your strength versus your weakness, it just like immediately shifts
Mhm.
um, your life perspective and how you approach things, whether
Right.
professional or personal.
Right. Well, and it's when you shared that with me, it just immediately made me think. So I'm the middle child in my family. I have an older sister and a younger brother, but my parents were always so much more protective over me than they were even under over my younger brother, even though he was younger than me. And
Right.
it frustrated me to no end because I was like, what do you mean? Like I'm older, like I can handle myself. So I feel like
Right.
after you said that to me, I was thinking about it. I was like, I feel like I have spent a lot of my life proving that I can handle myself, right? Like I can
Hmm.
take care of myself, kind of like how you're saying how um I kind of like adultified myself at a very young age because of that, you know?
Hmm. Yes, and that's your superpower, but it's also it can it's like the side of us that we're sometimes scared to admit because that's where like fears around, maybe doing a certain job, moving somewhere, or starting a relationship can also come into play. So just to like keep that as a sort of one description of how you show up in life can be a really helpful way to like ease your decision making.
Right. So another aspect that we kind of dove into in the reading was the timing portion
Mhm.
of it. So I thought that portion was really interesting too. Can we talk about that a little bit and how that works for people?
Yes. So in the Born method, we believe that there are 9 year cycles, and then each 9 year um, has a theme. So, like, even when
Mhm.
you think of your own lives, 1 through 9, it's sort of this like learning and discovery. And then the second 9 years of our lives have certain things that are attached
Right.
to it. But after the first 9 years we have, or the first 9 years, we have a neutralizing year. And that's before we enter sort of our like 36th year in life. And I'm sharing this math because it's often from our own lives too, when certain pivots and changes happen. Um, and based on your set of 20 numbers, I can then look at where you are in that 9 year cycle
Okay.
and share what your numbers are. And I think the beauty of it is instead of saying something generalized like this year is open to beginnings, I
Mhm.
can look at how your year's numbers correlate to your unique numbers and say, okay, this happens to be the opposite of your communication numbers. So this year you're going to change the way you talk. And it can mean that for your podcast, maybe you'll add new topics, or maybe you'll add a video component. But then we can get very specific around the guidance.
Mhm.
Or I had um, a client who, like, her numbers happen to be the opposite of her husband's, like, work numbers. And
Okay.
that year, and this was in February, I said, you guys might actually be in two separate places just for work. And she's like, no way, like, we're not doing that. And an opportunity came for her husband. They had to navigate, two separate ways of living, but I could share through the numbers that, yes, like, that's here now, but it's also just for this year. Next year, I see that you guys are figuring out like a common investment.
Mhm.
And your numbers align in the way it shows up for both of you. Um, so it's reading the potential of the year in connection with what's important to you and what's happening in your life.
Yeah, and I know that with ours, with my timing for this year, um, some of the, and please correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but some of the major themes was that I'm supposed to be more so like resting and researching and kind of taking a step back and taking a break. And then next year is kind of the year where I'm like expanding my network and doing all of the more action-oriented stuff, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, you're right. I think for 2025, what we said was, and I gave the example of like buying a house.
Yeah.
If you were thinking about buying a house, this is the year that's really good for you to look at the market, look at different neighborhoods, look at condos and houses. I'm, giving just a tangible example here, but it's a better year for detailed calculations and research for you, or like which who to host in your podcast versus making a big change or taking a new step or
Right.
buying a new house, which is next year looks like that's when you're going to be using this year's information to make a really strong new step.
Okay. Yeah, and I thought that was so interesting because this whole year I feel like has been just like forcing me to kind of do what you're
Yes.
saying and take a step back and research and stop trying to do so much. And I've been fighting it tooth and nail because that's
Hmm.
something that has felt kind of uncomfortable to me, right? To just
Right.
rest and let things happen and like do the research and take a step back. And so when you said that, I was like, that's actually really nice to have that reassurance that like, hey, this is actually supposed to be happening and this is serving a purpose. And the next year is like the year that you can go forward and like go full steam ahead.
Exactly. I think oftentimes we fight that feeling of we know it, but we want, to our earlier point, like things to happen a certain way in our lives, but it just this eases that like point of view and says, no, but there's like other ways this could happen. And it's because you'll get something better out of it if you stop forcing or going against the energy. Um, but yeah, I oftentimes hear from my clients saying, like, yes, like, why is this happening? Why is this year? Like, I'm so busy this year and I don't want to be busy. And I'm like, no, but this year you're just going to keep traveling. Like, even
Right.
if you don't want to, it's going to happen. Um, so yeah, it's a helpful sort of holds a flashlight into your current and future timing.
Right. Are there any other aspects of the of someone's profile that you think are pretty significant or that you think makes a pretty big impact on people when they come in for a session?
Yeah, I feel like um each number, they all serve a different purpose, but one of them that's been really helpful in like relationships has been the expectations number. So
Okay.
we have it's a pattern, but also even one of the numbers can share a lot about what we as individuals expect from others.
Hmm.
And for example, the number 4 expects to always have initiative and be able to do what they want to do. So if you learn this about your girlfriend or boyfriend, partner, and like one of the actionable ways I give guidance is if your partner has a 4 there, don't ask them questions, even if it's as simple as when are you going to be back home for dinner? Because you'll ask it as like, I just want to know so I can cook, or, it's a very simple questions, but 4s will hear it as, are they trying to control me? It's because their expectation is no one to ever control them, and they
Right.
let people be free the same way. Um, so I found that number to be incredibly powerful in decoding relationships.
Yeah.
Um, and the other one is a happiness and healing number,
Okay.
um, which can also give us practical guidance. Like if you have a 6 there, you're someone that can recharge um, by organizing things, by beautifying things. To my clients with a 6 there, I always share like just buy a simple like bouquet of flowers and put it in your kitchen, and that alone will like recharge you, just adding
Mhm.
something beautiful to your day. Or I had a marketing professional as a client. She was having a hard time because that the product they were working on, it didn't seem like they were paying attention to the design. And as a 6 in her healing number, design presentation is very important for her. So
Mhm.
it just helped her understand, okay, I need to personally like do this in order to feel better about the work
Right.
because it's important for her.
Which, I mean, arguably, if she has a point, like if you are making a new product, right? Like
Right,
probably should
exactly.
look up to par.
Yeah, and I'm simplifying it, but it was just like the way, where we get stuck can also
Hmm.
be clues about what helps us in our daily lives when we feel down, when we
Hmm.
need to recharge and need motivation. So like just little things that we can change about our lives, and that information is available in the
Hmm.
healing number.
That's so
Um,
cool. And it's cool that you have like little suggestions for people how they can live more in alignment with that. Like your suggestion with the bouquet of flowers to help with your health and happiness number. That's such an easy fix for people and
right.
it's so attainable. It's not like you have to uproot your life and completely change how you're doing things and change your behavior patterns. Like that's just something that's really simple. You buy a bouquet of flowers at the grocery store, you set it up, and it's going to help
Hmm.
you be more in alignment with what you want to be.
Right, exactly. It's doable, accessible. And I've had clients share it with their significant others, like, this is what I need, or this is
Right.
what helps me.
Right.
Um,
Well, that's a good point too, is that, and we kind of mentioned this before, is that it can help you foster those relationships because, hey, as your partner now, I know how you need to be shown up for. Where maybe
Hmm.
before I was clueless, and maybe even you were kind of clueless yourself. So everybody's confused.
Exactly. It's actually been fun how a lot of my clients end up buying a session or gifting a session for their significant others because they're like, you just need to like, you've been running away from therapy or you're not into astrology or other things. So just go to Ipek and the Born method. And I think the men have been really interested in this method because it gives a very sort of data and numbers based guidance saying like, hey, this is what you need and this is what your partner needs.
Mhm.
And it's okay to say that to each other because
Right.
it's not in like any um using the flower example that no one's going to take that personally. It's
Right.
just a way to show up in an easy way and
Right.
doable way.
Yeah. Hi, Love Bug. I've got a juicy little gift for you. And if you've been feeling off, stuck in your head, or like your vibe just is not vibing lately, then this is for you. I created a free guide called The Three Secrets to Creating a Magnetic Energy Shift right now. And it's exactly what you need to start shifting your energy instantly. These are the exact tools I use with my private coaching clients when they're ready to stop chasing and start attracting. We're talking powerful, we're talking practical, and yes, of course, we are talking a little bit woo, but in the best possible way. In the guide, you will learn how to clear energetic blocks, activate your most irresistible frequency, shift into receiving mode, and there's even a bonus secret on how to use your body language to instantly boost your confidence and presence. So, if you're ready to feel like the version of you who turns heads, magnetizes opportunities, and walks through the world like the main character, then this is your sign. Head to the show notes and click the link to download your free copy. It is quick, it is powerful, and it is going to leave you feeling like, damn, I really am that girl. All right, let's get back into the episode. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up actually with therapy, how people sometimes run away from it and instead
Hmm.
they'll be really engaged with your sessions because I think something that's kind of lost sometimes when you talk about healing and like and working through your trauma is that people think that there's something broken about them that needs to be fixed, but I'm of the
Hmm.
belief that the most healing happens when you're able to accept those pieces of yourself. You're not fixing
Right.
them, you're accepting them. And I think this gives people a really safe way to do that because they're learning about these other pieces of themselves that maybe they didn't quite understand and you're helping them to put the pieces together.
Right. That's so true. And I also make sure that it's all, there's no bad side of the numbers. Everything is information people can use. So even the things that we see about ourselves as hindering, so like an example I just talked about with a client is she needs a lot of information before making a decision. She sees this as a burden, but it's
Mhm.
actually how she makes decisions, confident investments. And if, that's not a weakness, it's a
Right.
way for her to move through life. And it also defines her, even in her schedule, she needs time to understand things and research things before making a decision. So I'm all about like reframing things as a tool for us to be able to use.
Right. Right. Instead of shaming ourselves into being a certain way, like that's like just how you're meant to be, and things are going to be
Exactly.
better when you operate in that way.
Right, right, exactly.
So everybody probably knows by now that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce recently got engaged. And if you do not know that, where have you been? Have you been under the biggest rock ever? But that said, Ipek has a very special surprise for us because she went ahead, she kind of looked at some of their numbers, and she is going to share that with us here on this podcast today. So Ipek, I would love to hear. I think everybody is obsessed with them and would love to hear whatever they can about them. So I'm going to give you the floor and let you do your thing.
Oh, sure. Yes, it's one of those things I feel like we all know them personally at this point, or
Right.
we're acting as though we do. So, it's a fun calculation. And if the birth dates that they have online are correct, I was looking at their individual numbers and then what I call a synergy number, which is the addition of their two numbers. And, um, so just their synergy alone has a lot of eights earth numbers. And it's no surprise that this has been a very like quick. but also strong relationship from the onset,
Hmm.
because in their synergy code, their purpose of being together is one, to show each other different perspectives, but also to be their true selves with each other. And when a couple has, this is the number 4 in their relationship purpose, when they have that number and they're able to be honest, authentic as individuals in their relationship, it can be an incredibly strong partnership.
Okay.
Um, and in some ways, these numbers actually show up in really strong, like company mergers or countries working together. Not that Travis and Taylor are like two entities, but in some ways they are. And
Right.
that's why they've been able to form this sort of strong entity together, and it's in their numbers too. And I think it's only going to grow. So
Okay.
everything they do is not just personally strong, but also it looks like, there are some business and um just like strength numbers here for them both in different ways.
Right.
And then in their relationship timing, this year is a 167, which happens to be Travis's happiness triangle. So this year, everything they did together made him especially happy. And it happens to be 167 is the opposite of Travis's way of working and living. So he's a 617, and together they become a 167.
Okay.
One way I read this, even if I didn't know them, is the way he's gonna work and show up in life is gonna change. In
Okay.
an engagement or, marriage is one of the biggest ways that can
Right.
happen. Um, I know he didn't retire, but I wouldn't be surprised at the end of this year if there was, news about him deciding on something
Right.
that changes his way of working too. And then next year, they're definitely getting married next year, and my guess is March or December
Okay.
because it shows up in Taylor's way of showing up. Her way of showing up changes in March or December. Her numbers
Okay.
shift. So that could be one way because, a wedding is a big way that we'll see
Right.
her differently than we have to this to
Right.
this point.
Right. And I might be stretching here, but I think we're all looking forward to having little Taylor Swift and Travis
Yes.
Kelce babies.
Yes. Let me see that. I think, 2027 looks like a 9 year for them. So that
Hmm.
could be when they have their first kid.
Oh,
It's hard
interesting.
though, especially when it's such a high profile couple. We don't know all the details, so
Right.
maybe they've known each other for longer. Maybe they've thought about kids and everything, and there's like already some world tour that they're planning, so they're going to time it around that. So it's a little
Right.
harder to see, but I
Right.
would say 2027
Ooh,
is.
okay. I'm so excited. I'm sure everybody listening is also so excited to see when that happens, But that's so interesting that you can actually, I think that's so cool that you can see that in the numbers with them. And this is a couple that is like so, well, this is a couple that's one private, but they're also very seen because it's
Hmm.
two like very famous people at this point. So it's cool that you can call that out about them, without personally really knowing them all that well.
Yes, yes. And it's actually um a lot of the times when you know the numbers and then you watch high profile people like this, and I have a couple clients who are well known, it
Hmm.
actually makes some of their dis like it makes more sense. You see it through a different lens. So like the way they show up in the New Heights podcast, like the touching and everything can be seen through the numbers as wanting to make sure they're each safe, like safety numbers come
Right.
up.
Oh, interesting.
So it like you start seeing it through a different lens.
That is so cool. Well, I think it's
Yeah.
so cool that you can just like go through life and you're like, oh, then you're like doing the calculations in your head.
Yes, it can be a lot, but it's useful as like just an extra piece of information to
Yeah.
help see those. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ipek, I know that we're kind of coming up on the end of our time here, but is there any last piece of advice or any last piece of information that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Um, yes, sure. So I would say something that I've been sharing with my friends, my clients is that, everyone and everything around us we can all be math people, we can all be numbers people, and we already use it a lot in our lives, whether it's timing in an important lunch date to how we feel on certain days. So this is just, I would say, the Born method is a way to um, highlight the power of numbers that's already around us. And we all are unique individuals with unique paths in life. Um, so it's there are many tools, and this is one of them that you can use to help you take stronger steps.
Hey, I love that. And then how can people best get in contact with you if they want to learn more about the Born Method or if they want to book a session?
So the Born Method website, which is thebornmethod.com, or my Instagram, the Born Method, and Born as in BORN, um, has information about how the method was developed, but also just how to make an appointment. You can get in touch through that, and feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm a one person team, so I'm here for any questions and contact and further conversations.
Amazing. And Ipek was generous enough to offer you guys 10% off of a single session. So you can find that code in the bio, and we will be including all the links in the show notes as well. So be on the lookout for that. Um, but Ipek, thank you so much for joining. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Carly. Thanks for having me. I had so much fun.
Me too. Okay, everybody, we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, then go ahead and subscribe so you get updates with us every week. You can also follow us on Instagram at KRC Coaching. If you're interested in working one-on-one, then go ahead and visit our website, krccoaching.com, to book your first 30-minute session for free. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Love you. Bye.